Welcome to the ColorLogic presentation. In this presentation we're going to cover the primary aspects of what ColorLogic is, how it works with a little bit of colour theory, and then we'll explain a little bit about how we work with the brands and the key benefits of this ColorLogic technology. After that we'll then do a hands-on training inside Photoshop, Illustrator and InDesign, and then we'll finish off with a visualization software which is called FX Viewer that comes with our licenses that allows you to see the effects of your designs on the screen before you go to proof or print. So for Ricoh customers, so far we have certified the Ricoh Pro C7100 series press. This is your cut sheet device and can use a metallized or pearlescent type of material, and then you're printing a white toner followed by CMYK. It is a dual pass printing process because the white toner is at the end of the machine, so it has to put the white down first and then come back for a second pass and print the four colour. We'll explain a little bit more about that later on. However, you can also use ColorLogic on any of the other devices that have white or even silver inks. So for example, the Ricoh Pro L4100 large format latex has a white, so you can use the same ColorLogic technology on that Ricoh device as well. We like to say that it's all about seeing is believing. When you physically see a printed sample in your hand, it has that wow factor because you can pick it up, you can move it, it's tangible. To show you something on the computer screen really doesn't give you the wow factor as such, although they do look nice on the screen. But what we really need to be targeting is thinking about luxurious goods. You've got to take into account the cost of the material. So a silver foil material is rather expensive. So kind of things we're looking for is packaging. It could be like niche product packaging from cosmetics, perfumery, golf ball boxes, that kind of thing. You could also look at things like coupons and tickets, discount vouchers, even clothing tags or promotional materials, high-end magazine covers. Magazines are a typical thing that use like foil stamping. So by using ColorLogic we can create that foil stamped look, but out of a foiled material. Now, in the marketplace there is a colour system out there that most designers are familiar with, and that is the Pantone colour system. And for the most part of their system, their spot colour system, that works well. However, they do have what's known as the metallic formula guide, and that really has a limited use. And that is because that swatch book is printed on an offset press using offset pigments and inks. And what that means to everybody else is it doesn't work on any other machine. So if you're printing onto your Ricoh device using a metallized foil substrate, a designer can't choose colours from this metallic guide because quite simply it won't match. You also cannot measure metallic colours accurately because if you use a colour measurement device like a spectro device, the light source is going to bounce on top of these metallics and bounce off at irregular angles and give you a false reading. So colour measurement and colour management cannot be done using metallics. So this makes it a very archaic system, limited only to the press that we've printed on. So on that basis, what we've chosen to do is replicate all the problems into positives for ColorLogic. So instead of working with spot colours where you're mixing tins of ink, we take CMYK, which is your four primary inks or toners that are used on a machine, and we use those to create the colour space. The sparkle and the reflectivity is created by the substrate or ink, depending on how you're printing. And the reason we say that is that ColorLogic is not just for white ink printing. We can also output files for printing with a silver ink or silver toner. So if Ricoh was to develop a silver toner in the future, this system will adapt to that and you can use the same system moving forward. What happens with ColorLogic is you put down certified materials to your machine. So those materials could be a foil, it could be holographics, it could be a rainbow foil, it could be silver metallics, pearlescents, anything that has that reflective quality. And then by printing those out on your machine, you use your own CMYK press profile. So this is your profile from your machine. So you don't have to measure these colours in because you're not trying to match a standard. We provide a layout, it's all done up with the swatch pages. It actually only takes 4 pages of, that's like a 12 by 18 inch sheet, so like a SRA3 type size sheet. So 4 of those sheets to create one swatch book. So we provide the layouts. All you have to do is put your logos on there and send it to print and use the Ricoh and EFI workflow. That will then process the ColorLogic files correctly, and then you have a swatch book. And because you're using your own profiles with your inks, toners, substrates, coatings, etc., it becomes unique to your company. So that allows you to be able to lock in design agencies to using you, because if they choose a colour from your swatch book, the only real way to replicate that is to send the file back to you to print it. Okay, so that covers the basics behind the actual colour system. So let's go a little bit more about how this colour works. So we're going to take a very simple visual guide here. So this is a simulation of, say, some silver foil substrate, but it could be pearl or holographics. But for this purpose, we're just going to show silver foil substrate. So that goes through the machine first. And as the first pass, we're printing a white ink mask. So the white is going to block out the substrate. And because of the way that the white ink works, it stops the substrate showing through. So all these little grey patches are still a substrate. This white is your white ink mask. Now you can see down the side here we've also scaled some tints, so we can control and do some quite interesting things by controlling the white tint that goes on that machine. Next we would print the cyan toner. The cyan toner, when it prints over the top of the silver substrate, then becomes a metallic cyan. What you do have to take into account though is silver substrate has a colour value of approximately 20 to 30% black as a colour. If you were to look at it, it's grey. So by putting that colour underneath the cyan, you don't get a pure cyan. It's going to dirty down because you're putting 30% black underneath that colour effectively. So you're never going to get a pure colour, but this will give you a very nice range. Next, we then print down the magenta toner, and obviously when the magenta is over the top of the silver, we get a metallic magenta, and when we've got magenta on top of the blue, we get these purples. We then put down a yellow, so now we have these bronze, we have golds going into the greens, blues, purples, orange, etc. And the final colour we put down black. Now the black is only used in 10 of our colours, and that's to create a gunmetal range, because we think that just having silver on its own is okay, but if we can create these more gunmetal colours, it's a bit more creative. And then we've got, as I said, we've got tints of the silver, so you can have 100% silver substrate going down to 10% of the substrate showing through, all controlled through white ink masking. Our system is comprised of three primary components. The first is what we call the printer's colour communication system, and that is, in simple terms, your swatch book. So this has to be printed first by the printer on your machine. You then would use the design software that we have, which is colour palettes and plugins. So for example, the colour palettes each colour has a unique name that replicates to the colour in the swatch book. So as a designer, you would flick through the swatch book, choose a colour that you want to use, and then use our palettes to build your files. The plugin that we have is for Photoshop that will allow you to create metallic images, and we'll demonstrate that later on. Once you've made your file, you then go into the visualization software, which is called FX Viewer. This is only for the Mac. However, all these tools and plugins will work on a PC. So just to remind you, FX Viewer is a Macintosh only application program. It allows you to see the FX of your design before you go to proof and print. It's not 100% colour accurate, but it gives you a good representation of what it does. It allows you to be able to cut down those iterative steps of going from proof to print. So if you imagine you're a designer and you're making some artwork and you've got no idea of, first of all, what the colour's going to look like because you've got no swatch book system, and you've got no tools to actually convert your files effectively, and you've got no means to visualize the files, it basically means it's a trial and error. And you can do that, and you can spend hours working on your files to create something, creating white ink masks, to get it onto the press and find out it looks terrible. And then you go back to the design stage, change the colors, do some tint tests, then make some adjustments to your art files, and it's this backwards and forwards going onto the press that is costly. It's going to slow down your production, it's interrupting the press, so your press is not maintaining maximum uptime, printing and being profitable. So what we do with our system is we take all of that out of the equation by creating a workflow for metallics. You can actually get the job right, visualize it, and then when you're ready, make a proof. We do have, in our first range of colours, 250 fully chromatic colours, and that means it spans through the colour system from left to right, so you've got the blues to the greens, etc. But we also created some quite interesting effects, and we'll demonstrate a few of these later on, but just to give you a quick overview, the names are basically dimensionals, waters, gradation effects, image effects, and watermark effects plus. They are all combinations of how we control the white ink or toner on the machines. So first of all, we've already discussed the metallic colours in the swatch book, so that's pretty much taken care of. Dimensional effect. This is where we control something within inside a metallic area. So for this to happen, it has to be in a metallic. So let's just pretend that we've got a green panel here. And in the background, we put a specialized design. It's like a little flourish, like a scrolly type image. And we created that using our color palette called dimensional effect. And what it does is when you move this print in the light, that pattern will go from a light green to a dark green as you move it. It creates this flip-flop type of effect, and it really makes the print jump around. And that is our primary effect that most people like using. It's a great way to grab attention. You've got to think about when something is being viewed by the observer. So if I'm a customer and I'm flicking through a magazine, I pay maybe a couple of seconds to each piece of article in that magazine as I'm flicking through and turning the pages. But if something on that page was to move and jump around, it's going to grab your attention, and then through using entrainment in the brain, you're actually reassociating yourself and your branding with that product. So it's a great way to get something across to clients. The next addition to that one that we created was gradation effects. This is the ability to gradate multiple metallic colours together. So in this instance, we've done a red into a gold. What we could also do is we could blend metallic into non-metallic. So we could have had metallic red here blending into just a yellow here. So we can do some really creative things at the design stage using our simple to use color palettes and plugins. Next, we created what we called watermark FX, and this is, as the name suggests, it's like a watermark. This first watermark FX, this one here, is the ability to make the same kind of pattern that we showed with dimensional effect visually appear and disappear as you move the print. It's all a trick of how the eye perceives light with the metallics. And again, it's a simple click and to apply these effects. After we developed the watermark effect, we wanted to be able to create a similar effect but on just a normal CMYK area, so it doesn't have to be in a metallic panel. This way we can actually create some more semi-covert effects. It's a great way of being able to have the first line of defense against counterfeiting. What you have to take into account with metallics is it reflects light, and by that nature it actually makes something more secure. So to give you an example, if I was a counterfeiter and I'm taking a piece of, I don't know, let's just say it's packaging for a luxury perfume, and that perfume is just printed with a spot colour, like a spot red with maybe some gold foil stamping on it, then somebody could open up the piece of packaging artwork, they can scan it in and create the dye line to create the packaging, which is fine. They could also colour measure the red to find out what spot colour is used, and they can then replicate it and just do some foil stamping and it's reproduced very easily. But if you're printed onto a metallized substrate, then you can't measure those metallic colours, because if you measure it, it's going to give you a false reading, so it doesn't give you a true reading. You can't photocopy it, colour copy it or scan it in without it being an incorrect colour value. So if you then add to that some of these effects, like things that appear and disappear, it makes your artwork a lot more secure just by using the color logic system. We then have image effects. Image effects, as I mentioned earlier, is the ability to create metallic images. And just because you can make images metallic doesn't really mean you should do. And this is all part of the training and education. A lot of people see our system and think, ooh, metallic images. And they take a product and they try and make it metallic and it will look terrible. And the reason for that is that you've got to take into account, again, how light works with metallics. So if you have a metallic design and there's light shining on it and you move it around, you get that playability, that shine and that sparkle, and that's fantastic. However, when a product is sat on a shelf and in a poorly lit room, if there's no light shining on the metallic, it's going to look very dark and very dull. And there are two things that I would say do not associate with your branding. You do not want your design to look dull. So by putting the metallic into the background and leave the product alone, you can make the product actually visually more appealing. So our golden tip to everybody is never make the product metallic. Always put the metallic in the background. However, there is always there's arguments to do things differently. So for example, the image we show here, we actually embedded some metallic content into the car and it works. So, but the reason this works in our opinion is because it's more of a concept car image rather than a realistic car. So you can get away with it. But golden rule, always try and leave the product CMYK and put metallic into the background. Now this is how it works for you on the press. It's really very simple. You've got your machine. You take our colour information, and the first thing a printer needs to do is run our certification test forms. So these are 2 pages. One page, this one at the background here, will show all of our primary effects. That's your solid metallic colours, you've got the dimensionals, watermark effects plus, and the gradations. And this gives you an idea of the different types of effects with an explanation about what each effect is. We will then have the second page of the test, and that is using these effects to build into designs to give you examples of what they look like. So unlike a normal test form file that's basically blocks of colour and then a lady with a bowl of fruit on her head, we designed ours to be at least interactive where you can actually learn from it, present it to your own customers as a selling tool, and to leave with your customers as examples. So there are room on here to put your logos and branding information, but you need to print these and send them to us for certification. Once you are certified, you go onto our website as a certified provider, and we will then help promote you to brands as we discuss and talk to them. You also need to print the swatch book at the same time. We also provide these swatch books as single sheets, about the same size as these test forms, which are a more low-cost solution, so you can print out multiple samples and send them out to customers that may be potential, and then when you hook them in, say, we'll provide you with a proper swatch book. So it's however you want to work that. Next, once you've got it off your presses, it's all about how you design with it. So we have the ColorLogic Design Suite, which is the color palettes, the plugins, and also the FX viewer. So you would take that along with our test forms and swatch books and use those to make your design. Now there's two ways to do this because we have two different types of licensing. First license that we have is what we call our standard license. You get one copy of this system to install on your computer. This is designed for the converter, the type of person or the printer or pre-press house that wants to take a file from a customer and basically say, here, have my swatch book, tell me what colours you want to use and I will do all the work for you and send you back a proof. And that's fine. However, what we typically see is that designers that work in CMYK get that approved by their client. If you send a CMYK artwork to a printer and then add the metallics, then you go back to the design stage and the brand, they may reject it because it looks nothing like what they approved in the first place. So the second type of model that we have for our licensing is what we call the premium license. And I'll cover that a little bit later on in more depth, but the premium license gives you multiple copies of this. You'd get one for yourself and anything up to 10 additional of the suites of this that you can then sell to a design agency or customer. So, or you can give them away, it's entirely up to you. But if you sell them, you're going to recoup some of the cost on your cost of your license. So we'll cover that a little bit later on. We go more onto the website of how it all works. Once you've got your files, or the designer's got the files, you pick a colour from the swatch book, you make your design and you convert your files. It's really that simple. You then take that file, save it as a PDF, and bring it into the FX viewer, which will then allow you to visualize the file in a 3D environment to see the foil effects, and we will show you that later on. We then take the file as a PDF file and we output it. Now I'll explain when I go into the design stage, but we never create a white ink mask. And this is the unique thing with ColorLogic, is that even though you're making a white mask to print on your Ricoh device, we don't have to make a white ink separation. And the reason we don't do that is because, first of all, you cannot see an opaque white on your computer screen. As a spot color, it's impossible. So a designer would have to color this up something random, like maybe a red or a green. And what that means is that if you have to color up something different, you're not designing in the correct color space. So it makes it harder to color up. You also, with white, you're making a knockout mask. So you're actually colouring up the areas that you don't want to be metallic. And that, for example, can be very, very complex. So let's take as an example, if we have this design here, and we only wanted one element to be, like this word here, colour. If we only wanted that to be the foiled effect, we would then have to make colour knockout masks around everything else for a white, and then not for this area. And that is very, very time consuming. For anybody that's ever made a white ink mask before, they will know exactly what I'm talking about. It takes a long time and it's complex because you're thinking in reverse. So what we do is we create something different. It's like a silver plate. So we call it our effect printing plate. It's where we want to see the effect when you're printing. And I will demonstrate how that's done. But in simple terms, very easy to use, never make a white ink separation. Now, we're very big on education and training because, in our opinion, if you're not taught how to use a system, you're not going to create good effects. Now, even though our palettes and plugins are easy to use, it doesn't guarantee you a good looking file. You've got to have some design skill. You've got to know how to actually work with metallics. And what we offer to printers that have our license is that as a learning system for you is that if you have a job that you're thinking of doing in metallics, we would rather you send us a low-res PDF and say, what would you do to this file to make it work on press? And if it's possible to make it in metallics, we will tell you. And we will then put sticky notes onto that PDF and tell you areas of what we would do to that file to get the best effect. You can then go away, make the file, and then send us another PDF file already converted and say, did I do a good job? And we can tell you. And that way, you're learning based on the work that you're producing, and rather than me trying to show you how to convert a file that may be of no relevance to you. Now, the one thing we do request you do is that all customers will have access to our login area on our website. And I'll go through this on the web, but basically it covers all different aspects of how to get started with the system, printing samples, training and education, plus all our software installers. But we'll do that live and we'll show you how that works. We also found that printers, once they were buying our system, would then have to hire a design agency to create artwork files or spend a lot of time in-house designing things up. And that basically meant a cost associated to that customer. So what we have done is, over the past 6 years, from developing our system, any art files that we've created for ourselves, we put it into our login area for our customers to use. So you have access to all our designs that we've done in the past, whether they're greeting cards, packaging, promotional literatures. We even have our old brochures and technical documentation. So there's a little bit of something for everybody in this lockdown area on our website. And you can take those files and just print them out, which is great. Or alternatively, you can take something maybe from a label design and mix it with something from a greeting card design to make your own unique elements. So it's really a self-promotional marketing campaign ready for you guys to get out there and start driving opportunities for your company. And what we've worked out is the cost alone for over 70 files would pay for the cost of the license. So imagine how much it would cost you to have an agency design these files up for you. So it's already done and taken care of. Now, ColorLogic is not just about a digital printing press. We will work on any type of device. So you may already have systems in place. For example, you might already be an offset printer that's just invested in a digital press. So if you had an offset machine, you could actually print ColorLogic on that machine using our silver ink technology. But you could also use it on cold foil or large format screen printing. So if your company just starts out in digital and then you go into large format printing and then go into inkjet as well, ColorLogic will adapt to that and grow with your business. One system can go out to any of these machines, whether it's with a white ink or toner or with a silver ink or toner. Approximately half of our time is spent working with brands, and for us as a business that is very important because brands drive the demand for our system. So we can have meetings with people like Audi, P&G, Hallmark, and then that filters down through the supply chain through to the printers. So it's in our interest to work with these people and show them the new technology. Because if we're reliant upon people taking our technology to the brands, it might never get there. So this is what we do. We have these working campaigns with these customers. We now have live products out in markets with P&G. Hallmark was one of the first companies globally to start implementing ColorLogic for digital greeting cards. So it's on demand, you order it and it's printed in metallics. GHD hair straighteners, a large company out of the UK. Ladies will be familiar with the GHD hair straightener technology. They, for the past 3 products, have now used ColorLogic, which just says a lot. If they're using our technology again and again, then obviously there's a value there for them. A lot of the things we don't even get to see because our brands are very, very secretive. All they tell us that they've done work for Adidas or Nike. Pilot pens are using it continually with our ink system. We also work with some of the smaller brands because the small brands may one day become a big brand. But ultimately, any customer we can help get that little added value and get their brand out there is in an interest to us. Now, one thing that you can do to promote your technology on your Ricoh device is that there are devices out there that do not have white toners, and I'm not going to name drop who they are, but they would only get this type of effect. So if you print without a white, then everything becomes foil. All the skins become foil and they look horrible. It's flat, it's dull, it's lifeless. But by using the white toner, it blocks out the design and it makes this really impacting statement. So what we recommend for our customers is print some of these out of both options. So you can go to your customer and say, this is what you get off XYZ press, this is what you get off our press, and you can just show them that added value. So it really is a unique way to be able to upsell your technology. Now, just to recover some of the things we've discussed earlier, and to add a few extra ones in there, the ColorLogic system is adaptive. So if there was a new type of substrate that's certified by Ricoh, then obviously you can just print our color system on that new substrate and you have a new swatch book. If you do have different materials, for example, a pearlescent, a silver metallic, a silver foil, a rainbow foil, or a holographic, then you print our swatch book on each one of those materials, and that gives you a unique color space for each material you print onto. If there's a new type of machinery comes out, or you put new types of toners into your machine, simply reprint the swatch books. So that's what we class as an adaptive solution. It will adapt to the changes in your printing environment. We also work with all major printing processes, as mentioned earlier. One unique feature for what we like to cover for ColorLogic is that ability to open doorways. So as a printer, you're continually trying to get new business, or at least keep the business and retain the customers that you've already got. But everybody's competing. So if you're printing in CMYK and your customer down the road is printing CMYK, it's commodity printing. You're competing, and then you're basically fighting over the price of a cut sheet job. Now, if you can bring something else to the market, and you can say to your customer or a new customer, look at this new technology we've got. We've just invested in this ColorLogic technology with Ricoh cut sheet device, and this is what we can do. Now, to give you an idea, we have some customers that I've suggested to this before, and they've done this with great success. They've created like a postcard design. Basically, they send it out to their customers, inviting them to an open house or an open day at their print shop. They basically say, we're going to put on a little bit of food and drink, because that always gets customers to come in with free food and drink for some reason. But once you've got that customer in, you can then show them how that design was created in your pre-press or design studio, and you can then guide them through to your press room and show them how it works on the machine and give them a printed sample at the end. You can also, in the meantime, show them all your other equipment, whether it's your finishing equipment, whether it's lamination technology, anything else that you sell. So it's a great way to be able to upsell your other technology by inviting people in to see something new that you've invested in. I'm guaranteed that you'll get people responding to that. Shiny, as we call it, always gets people's attention. It's that kind of magpie effect. When it shines, it gets people's attention. So that is a great way. And we do believe sending the printed sample out is the best way. A lot of people are trying to do stuff now with digital markets, so just doing everything by email campaigns, webs, virtual reality type stuff. But at the end of the day, this is a physical printed product, and you've got to get that in the hands of the brand or the customer. Once they see it and they can feel it, it's got more impact. We also mentioned earlier about how we can speed up the process by cutting out the iterative steps of proofing, going backwards and forwards on the press, and taking colours and tweaking things around. Now, think about that from a brand perspective. If you can get a brand's product on a shelf 2 weeks quicker than you would normally do by using an old-fashioned manual method of printing or making white ink masks, etc., what do those 2 weeks equate to in revenue for that customer? So that is one thing. Also, you've got to think about, if you can hook one new client by using ColorLogic, what value does that have to your organization? But then on a negative side, if you lose one customer to somebody else that has a ColorLogic system, what's that equate to as a loss to your company? So there's two ways to look at things. Do you want to try and gain new opportunity? Do you want to keep the new opportunity with your customers? We've also mentioned the maximum uptime and downtime in the press. That's basically all about trying to make sure that the press is printing and printing the job rather than use it as a proofing machine, although you can do it as a proof when you get to that stage. Next, we're going to cover some basics behind the landing pages. So first of all, let's go into, let me open up this file. Let me get the right web address. So we're going to show you what happens with our licensed users. So first of all, I'm going to show you this PDF file. Every licensed customer of ours will be sent this PDF file, which basically, as soon as a licensee comes on board, it gives them access to our client login area on our website. So there's a URL link which will take you to the place where it's a lockdown area. You put in your username and password as provided by us. We'll tell you the type of license that you've purchased, because we've got different installers for different licensing. And then you have the password activation code to be able to install it. FX Viewer has its own installation process, so you have to follow the on-screen instructions. and then we have our new tool which is called pattern effects, which I'll show you as well. So once you've got that information, you'd go here to the Vault client login, which is what that URL is. And if you're a printer, go into the printer license vault. If you're the design agency, this is where your customers would go into it. So we click in here. There's a copyright information, which is fine. We're just going to go through. And it brings up this step-by-step guide. So basically, we're going to go through the basics of this. So step 1, print the form. So it's got an action required here. It says you need to print these forms and submit the samples to us. As I mentioned before, that demonstrates what our system does. You also have access to the swatch book, or these are the color charts which you can then print off your machines. Step 2, print samples. So these are our artwork samples. So if you click here, it will then take you to our area where we have all these different designs, so you can click and download things where they've got rating cards, etc. Going back to this, we've got the training. So this is the very, and I can't stress that enough, important part for our system. We do ask our customers to watch and review our videos, and the reason we do this is because if you don't, you won't learn the system correctly. Each of our videos actually maps to our user manual. So we found that people don't read user manuals, so we replicated each section from the manual into a video. We have different sections. You've got stuff for working with InDesign, we've got ones for working inside Photoshop, etc. So if you want to, for example, work out how to do dimensional effects in Photoshop, there's a video for that. If you want to go into Illustrator and work, how to work with color palettes or do the watermarks, we've got videos for that as well. Next, we have our sales tools. So we have a PowerPoint presentation, which is similar to what we ran through earlier on. We also have a short condensed movie, which is like a presentation explaining about what color logic is, and then it has a very quick demonstration of how the files are converted and also the FX viewer. It's great for you to be able to take into your customers and play on their computer screen. So you can play it, you'll tell them exactly what color logic is, and then you can show them some samples. So it's a great way to be able to help you sell the system. We then have generating revenue from selling color logic products. Now, first of all, I'm going to explain how that works by showing you our printer license options. So licensing, as I mentioned before, we have two different types of licensing. We have the standard and a premium. I'm just going to explain about what they are. So what we're really looking at here is this pink box here, first of all. So on a standard license, you get one copy of our FX viewer and one copy of our design suite, which is the color palettes and plugins. When we're working with a premium, you'd get 3 copies of FX viewer for yourself. So that means you can put it on 3 of your terminals inside your pre-press workflow. And then you get a multiple installer for the color palettes and plugins, which means you can put it on as many computers as you like within inside your company. Same with the Premium Plus. Now, the added value for the Premium Plus is when we get to the design suites, and it might seem a little bit confusing this, but we sell the design suites, we give you the design suites with the FX viewer. You don't get any additional copies in the standard, but in our Premium you get 4 of them, and in our Premium Plus, which is our most popular package at the moment, you'd get 10 copies. Now these retail at $599 per seat. So if you were to sell all 10 of those that you get with your license, you'd make $5,999, okay, or $5,990, sorry. And from that, if you think that's nearly $6,000, you basically recoup nearly the cost of the licensing just by selling those design suites. And that is why we've done this. We've done it to help you get into the design agency, but also to help you try and get some of the cost of your licensing back. So instead of a printer looking at the price and saying, ooh, how many jobs do I have to convert to get the cost of that back? You look at it this way. If you've got one new customer, is that value for your company? If you were to sell the design suites to get a lot of that licensing back, is that a value to your company? So this is why we try and push this one here. It gets you upstream to the designers. The designers can then use the tools. We will support them. We will do the training and education like we're doing here. And from there, they then send the files to you to print. So this is really the workflow that we would suggest going through this Premium Plus model. All licenses come with 24 months, so 2 years of what we call our SMART program. This is sales, marketing and related training program. And basically what that means is you're covered for technical support by email. You'll get access to all our training and educational videos. You get the option to be able to buy and sell our design suite. So if you wanted to buy more of them, you can buy them from us. You also get listing on our Find a Printer geo map, which is what we use to promote you to our agencies. So let me just go and show you how that geo map works. As a printer, once you come on board, we would have this Find a Printer map. And this will basically show you all the installs at the moment. So the black blobs here, these are the customers that are currently going through our certification process. So if I hover my cursor over it, it'll tell me the name of that printer, but that is all it does. It doesn't tell me anything else. Once you become certified, I'm zooming around some of these, and if I were to click that pin, it then brings up all the customer information saying that you're a certified printer, that you've gone through the test forms, you've printed them, and we've confirmed that you can actually print with our system correctly. We then promote you by giving away your details and contact points to customers. So it's basically just a way to be able to get you in and get people finding you. So if we're working with a brand and they say, who do you have in, I don't know, for example, Portugal, we can point the brand to a customer in Portugal. So this is what our geo map is all about. Okay, so that's the map. So going back to the training and login page, I'm just going to have a look at this PDF file. So the PDF file that we have here basically tells you what you can buy and sell our products for. So if you want to buy additional design suites from us to sell to your customers, you can buy them for $149 for just the color palette and plugins on their own, and then resell them for $199. This does not contain FX Viewer. This is just for Photoshop, Illustrator and InDesign. If you wanted the design suite with the FX Viewer, you can buy it for $499 and resell them for $599. So we actually let you make money by reselling these products. And the same with the FX Viewer on its own. Okay, so next, manuals, technical documents. So we have two things here. Click to open. We have our user manuals in multilingual, so you can click on that and review them. As I mentioned, the user manual is basically what our training videos are, and then the user manual for the FX Viewer. Now, when you're working with on your Ricoh device, we do ask you to use the correct workflow information, so you should have that provided by Ricoh. If not, we can go to the, if you go to the partners page and go to press manufacturers, and then when that loads up, my web seems to be a little bit slow this morning. Here we go. Go to digital press and then scroll down and find the Ricoh, and then we have it here, Pro C7-100, and then click on here and you can download the documentation. And the documentation, I'm just going to open it up just to show you what it looks like. It's basically will give you a step-by-step guide on how to output your files. So using the EFI multipass white application, tell you how to output your files for printing with ColorLogic. So that is the how it all works and the licensing side. Next, I want to go through and show you how we work inside. Let's do Illustrator first. So Illustrator, we have a set of specialized palettes. So to get to those, once you've installed the system, go to the window menu, go down to graphic style libraries, and then you've got ColorLogic. The graphic style library is a pre-built set of libraries that contains the CMYK information as well as the white or silver toner separation. And there are two different ways to work with the system. You can either work manually, in which case we'd use a different set of palettes, which is only in CMYK, this is explained in our tutorial videos. But for today, I'm just going to show you the easier way of working. So what I'm going to do is open my separation preview, and I'm going to show you, if we turn off the CMYK, we have three elements here that have got this silvery kind of separation. So the silver that you see here is the silver substrate, and the white is your white toner or white ink mask. If you were to print this using a silver ink or silver toner, then that silver would be your silver ink or toner and the white would be the white paper. So this is the unique feature to ColorLogic, is it doesn't matter how you're going to output this file, it's the same design for no matter how you print. So let's go through and color up this label here, and it could be any type of design, it could be packaging, could be anything. So really this is just an image, we're just looking at color. Now this image here, we've got golds and bronze, so let's stick with a gold and bronze color scheme. So I'm going to colour up this grey block here. I'm just going to select that element using my direct selection tool from Illustrator just to pick up the individual element, and I'm going to choose a colour. So I will be looking through my swatch book here and I choose a colour. So maybe I want a gold, which is number 17 for example. And I can then go through and colour up my artwork. And what I'm doing now is doing what's called dimensional effect. So in the background we have this gold metallic which is number 17. So if I want that dimensional effect inside it, it has to be number 17 dimensional effect. Really quite simple. Down below we're going to do a bronze colour, so let's go with number 10. Pick up that black band to make that dimensional. So the background was number 10, the effect is 10 dimensional effect. So if I now turn off my CMYK, you'll see that now that separation plate has been automatically generated as we design. Now one thing I will show you as well is that when you're designing with these type of tools, I'm just going to try and show you something here. Let me just put a frame around. And it's important I show you this because you've got to know some tips and tricks inside Illustrator. So if I had a design that's this blue panel and with a black keyline, and I want to make this one of our colours, say for example number 7, I select that and click on number 7. Watch what happens to this frame. The frame disappears, and that's because this graphic style is a set of commands that says it's got a certain fill with a certain overprint of colour logic. It doesn't know it's got a stroke around it. So let me just undo that. So to get around that, and this is where you need to learn how to work with graphic styles, if you hold down the Option key on your keyboard on a Mac, that's the Alt key, the one next to the Command key, and then click on your colour, watch what happens in this appearance here. So at the moment it's got a fill of this blue with a black stroke. If I click on here, it's going to add these to the effect. So all I need to do now is click on that blue one and delete it. And I've now retained that black border. So that's just a tip and trick, and we do explain this in our tutorial videos. We could also create gradations. So if I wanted to create a metallic blend, so let's have a look. Do something, take off the key line. And let's turn, I'm just going to reset all this back to a kind of a default type look. Okay, so I'm going to take this design here and I'm going to make a gradient. So let's do a linear gradient. I'm going to take 2 colours. Now this time I'm going to design manually because I can't use my graphic style because that's a command for a solid fill area. So applying a command to that wouldn't work. So what we have to do is use our other palette. So we go to Window, Swatch Libraries this time, Colour Logic. And this brings up all of our colours just in CMYK. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some colours. So I'm going to take this blue, I'm going to drag it down to where that left hand point is, and let's go with something else. Let's go with this number 170. So I've created a CMYK blend. So if I just turn off my CMYK separations, you'll notice there's no masking in there at all. So what I can do now is if I duplicate that box, so I've got 2 of them, I'm just going to move one out of the way so you can see that. So we've got the one that's on the top. This time I'm going to use my Colour Logic silver plate. I'm going to take that colour and bring it down to where the blue is. I'm going to bring that silver down to where the purple is. And then I'm going to go to my overprint fill for my attributes. So I've now got a metallic blue blended into metallic purple. Let me just move that silver Colour Logic plate out of the way so you can see how this works. But I'm now going to do something different. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to go back and do another duplicate. So just to show you again, we've got 2 of those. This time, instead of putting silver on both ends, I'm going to put silver where the blue is, and where the silver is here, I'm going to put the value to 0. So I'm going to move that down to 0 down here. And what that does now, when I put that to overprint, is it actually will allow me to have metallic blue here blending into process like purple. So it's metallic into non-metallic. This is where it can create some quite interesting effects. It doesn't always have to be solid foil. Next, with that top element selected, just move it out of the way again just to show you that. Next, with that selection, I'm going to take that 0 one and put it in the middle. And then I'm going to take a solid silver and put it on the left hand side. So I've now got metallic blue blending into process, going back out into metallic. But I'm going to now turn that rotation around 90 degrees. Okay, so now let's just change the shape a little bit. Something like that. We've actually now made something take on almost like a three-dimensional look and feel, because we're creating this highlight effect not through the substrate, which is what most people try and do. They think, ooh, the substrate's shiny, therefore a highlight is shiny, and it's not. So we put the metallic in the top and the bottom, and the highlight area is a non-metallic, which makes it look visually brighter. So now we can create these amazing effects. So really it's all a combination of using our different palettes, and again they are explained in our step-by-step tutorials, which is why we really do stress to watch our training videos. Okay, so we're going to do one last thing. We've actually got another palette called Pattern Effects, and let me just show you how this works. So first of all, I'm just going to create a design. So let's just, for argument's sake, it's a blue box. And if I wanted to put one of our pattern effects on there, first of all I'm going to explain what pattern effects is. So let me just go into my hard drive and find the pattern effects information. You would have this as a manual already. I'm the developer, so I am going to my master files. So I'm going to open up the pattern effects user manual, which is what you get. So it explains a step-by-step guide on what we can do with this system. So it's got information on how to install with licensing. It's got all about how we can work with gradients, scaling, rotating, etc. So I'm just going to quickly work through. It tells you how to install the system. It then explains about where you'll find the palettes, and then explains the basics behind how it works. So we do recommend you go through here. It also tells you how you can scale and rotate and do some quite interesting things. But what I'm going to also show you is that you can print out sample pages. Well, just to give you an idea, here's some examples of using these patterns. We put it in the background of a business card, greeting cards, box packaging. Now I'm going to show you these printable pattern pages. So the printable pattern pages are basically, we have 20 patterns in volume 1, and it shows you that pattern as a metallic. It shows you the pattern as a dimensional effect, as a watermark effects plus, but also using the patterns for embossing, like a micro emboss plate, or also for varnishes. So if you've got a clear toner on your device, you can use these pattern effects to create these clear toners on top of your designs. You can actually print these files out as well, which is a great thing because that gives you something that you can physically see. Going back to our website, we actually do have this listed. So you go to Products, Pattern Effects, Volume 1. And you can actually, when it loads up, you'll actually see a video of each one of those effects. So just to give you an idea of how it works, go to patterns number 1 to 4. And you'll see here, I'll just play this one for example. It actually has, make it full screen. And my web sharing is going a little bit slow today for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. Something strange is going on. I'll look at that, but basically you play these and it'll show you the video is actually working. I think they're all trying to load up at the moment for some strange reason. Try these one. Yeah, I think it's the JavaScripting on it. There we go. They're all loading. So basically they're all trying to load up, but once you've done it you can play them and move them around and see the different effects off each video. Okay, so back into Illustrator. Let's show you how this works. Just bear with me, quit from that. Go into Illustrator, go to Window menu, Swatch Libraries, Pattern Effects. So this is going to list all of our patterns and all of our effects. What I'm going to do here is I'm taking this design, again I'm going to make a duplicate because I want to put the pattern on top of it. So I've got 2 elements. Now all I choose is which pattern I want to use. So I'm just open this up a bit. I'm going to use this one as a metallic, for example, and it will apply that pattern in metallic over the design. I could also do some quite interesting things by flicking through these designs, and I'll show you one of them now. So let's take something else. Let's take this one here. So I've made my pattern, and I'm going to go to my scaling and turn off the scale, stroke and transform objects. We're just going to transform the pattern here. And we're going to preview, and let's do say 200%. We can scale the pattern up inside that element and click on OK. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to rotate that pattern. So I'm going to go to the rotation thing here, I'm going to put in a transform the patterns only, and let's do a 45 degree. So now we can change, well, let's do something a bit different, so a bit more visual. There you go. So we can actually move, rotate and scale things. And if we were to scale things down, you can scale patterns up and down, but it's all about using the scale tools within inside Illustrator. If we go and edit this again, you'll see what I mean by transforming the object or transforming the pattern. So anyway, have a play around with these tools if you get them. You can do some quite interesting things. So Illustrator's covered. We're going to save that file as a PDF file. Just wait for my computer to catch up with me this morning. Typical always works slower than we want it to work fast. So I'm going to save that Illustrator file onto my desktop. Just as a normal PDF file. There's no trickery involved with this whatsoever. It's just a normal type of PDF. And where are we? PDF. Just do a press quality one for this. And we're going to show you how this works inside the FX viewer a little bit later on. So once that's finished saving, it's done. We're now going to go into Photoshop. Now Photoshop works very different to Illustrator because we're working with pixels. There's no actual solid colours inside an image, so we need to have an algorithm to calculate the metallic effect for the different values of colour within inside this image. Now what we do suggest to our customers is look for an image that's got a lot of depth. So for example, this image here is perfect. You've got these foreground elements, you've got something in the middle, and you've got a background. As we've said before, put the metallic in the background. Leave the foreground elements in CMYK and leave the product in CMYK. So what we do, we go to the window menu, we go to extensions, and we load up the ColorLogic image effects. I've got it pinned on the side here. So that's going to load up the plugin. And once it's loaded up, there is just a simple one button that you have to take care of. And again, my computer's working slow today, maybe because I'm recording stuff. There we go. Oh, actually I've got the wrong one. That's my other development one, sorry about that. And maybe it's this one. There we go. So we have two different systems that we're developing. So okay, so this is the one here. We have one button, and it doesn't make any difference if you've got multiple layers or whether it's RGB, LAB, CMYK. All we have to do, click the button, it's going to go through and do all those calculations for us. And to give you an idea of what it's doing, if we look at colour, for example, yellow is a weaker colour than a blue, so you need less metallic effect underneath the yellows than you do underneath the blues to make them work. So that's calculated into our system. Shadows do not have metallic effect in them because shadows absorb light, they do not reflect the light. So on that basis, we don't want to have the metallic effect there, so we need to put a white ink mask into all these shadow areas. So there's a lot of things that it's taking into account, but just to make it easy, we put it into one button to do it automatically for you. So if you look at the separation, it is a screened plate. I'm just going to trick the system to show you what it would look like, because at the moment you only see black and white because of the way the separations work in Photoshop. So I'm just going to trick that by making a duplicate. So the silver is your silver substrate, as we mentioned before. The white is your white toner. So we can see we've got these complex photorealistic separations for the toner, and this creates this great dimension to your images. Now you could just leave the image there and everything will be metallic that's got colour, but you don't want to do that. You want to get contrast in there. Look for about 30 to 40% of the design being in metallic and the rest of it in CMYK. So to do that, you've got to make some masks, and we cannot do that for you. We cannot create a script that will work out what you're thinking, because what you want to be metallic is completely subjective. You might decide to put it in the background, but maybe only put it in the pillars and in the sign. You might not have it in this area here. So how would we know that? So you have to make some masks. This is where having layers really does come in very handy, because I can make selections of my layers to make my masking. So what I'm doing here is you can see all the areas there that I've masked out, and I've done it through the neon flashes here. So I go onto my metallic channel, the ColorLogic separation, and I hit the delete key and delete the area that I do not want. What that's going to do is it's going to put white toner into all those areas. Well, white is the white toner. I'm just going to flatten my file, and you don't have to flatten your file normally, I'm just doing it for visualization purposes. And if I switch on and off, you see that design darkening down. So this is with no light shining on it. That's what you've got to take into account with your designs. They do darken down when you add that metallic separation. So by leaving the foreground elements and things in CMYK, it retains that visual clarity. So from there we can then save that file. I'm going to save that as a PDF. And let's do PDF, just a normal press quality one again. And then whilst that's saving, we're then going to go and show you a couple of other files that we're going to convert. I'm going to start out here, and this is just to give you a couple of tips and tricks. So first of all, as we keep saying, leave the product as CMYK, put the metallic in the background. Oops. So we run that. I'm going to keep this plugin window open. And you would make your cutout around that lady. Now what we do recommend is you put some feathering on your selection. Just a couple of pixels, just to give it a softer edge so you don't get a hard edge against your cutout. It's just, you know, pre-pressed tips and tricks. And then delete to white the area. Now these are low resolution images just to show you the screen, to do them quickly. Depending on the size of your image will depend on how long it takes to process. Now if I turn on and off, so you'll see at the moment you've got this blue background. When I put the metallic in, this woman actually becomes more visually appealing because you're darkening the background. And that's why we say put the metallic in the background, not in the foreground. I'm going to close that one down. Let's look at this one here, impact colours. Impact colours are what I call like the reds, your yellows, your oranges. They're things that draw attention to the print. Now you've got to work out how metallics work with these colours. So if I was to put a foil underneath this red, I'm going to get a reddish looking foil, but it's not going to be a pure red. It's actually going to dirty it down and go more darker, but you will get an effect. Same with an orange. You put silver substrate under orange, it's going to look more of a brown. It's not going to say orange. So by leaving your impact colours alone, that's going to retain visual clarity on your design. Put the metallic into the background and make the design pop. We could also think about contrast. If everything is metallic, your designs are going to look flat and dull. So what I'm going to do here, run the plugin on this one, and we're going to use a mask to mask out that strange Christmassy fruit and the red ribbon. And we do our feathering, selection and everything else, and knock out the area. So what we now have is metallic in the background, and then this is going to be non-metallic, and then the bottom part is metallic. So if you think about it, you have metallic next to non-metallic next to metallic, and that allows the light to interact differently between those two coloured areas, which gives it dimension and playability in your print. Sometimes you may get something where it's metallic on a metallic background, and in which case, which would you make metallic? Well, the rule stands the same. Make the background metallic, leave the product. Even more so when the product is already metallic, because what you'll find is that metallics is basically a highlight like we're seeing here with shadow. And then you've got in the not so reflective areas, you've got this sort of like metallic-y area. So you're trying to make that metallic would actually not really work very well. So we do recommend, again, metallic in the background. And look what happens here. If I just run that through the plugin, go onto my masks, and delete to white. Okay, so this background is without the metallic. Now put the metallic background in, this becomes more visually apparent now. It actually looks more appealing and off the page. So again, this is the use of putting the metallic in the background. So it's almost the opposite of what you think is what you should do. Now, working with metallic substrates, you can actually do some quite interesting things. So what I'm going to do here is convert this image. And the reason I've chosen this image is because there's two different types of metallic effect. We have the paintwork in the body of the car, which is more of a matte metallic, and then you have these alloy rims, which are basically a chrome. So can we actually create two different effects? Well, yes we can. So we've run the plugin, I'm going to make a mask and delete the area that I don't want to be metallic. So if I now show you the separation, I've got these two areas. I'm going to make a mask now around this wheel, around the rims. I'm going to invert my selection, so I'm selecting all of this background area. I'm going to bring up my curves. I'm going to pull from the shadow point straight down. Let's go down to about 50%. So what we're doing now is we're reducing the metallic effect by 50%. And what that means is it's actually putting a white toner over the top to stop that silver substrate from showing through, but not completely. And that way you actually got to restrict the shine to more of like a shimmer. So we can create two different effects, and then the wheel will have that more highly chromed effect. So two different effects from one thing, but this works only with the metallic substrates with the white ink. So that is how Photoshop works. We've now got a couple of PDF files that we created, and we're going to demonstrate these inside the FX Viewer. So we take that file, drag and drop onto the FX Viewer application. That's going to load the FX Viewer. In the background of FX Viewer is a rip. It's a GhostScript rip, which is going to rip your PDF file into a format that can be rendered inside our 3D viewing program. So it takes a few minutes to open up and render the file. Once it's done so, you'll be presented with an environment. And depending on which environment you're presented with, depends on which one you last used. So we'll see which one I last used on my file. Okay, so it should be any minute now. And again, I think I've got some slow issues on my computer today. So let me just explain about what the FX Viewer is. The two different types of environments that we have is what we call the booth and the studio. So we're in the studio at the moment, which is basically a design studio. The booth is like a pre-pressed light box, and we'll demonstrate that in a moment. I think my computer's not enjoying being recorded. Okay, so let's move this file around. I can just show you it's a three-dimensional room. You can go all the way around if you like, and there is light sources coming in from different directions. So all you need to do as a Ricoh customer is go to the view menu, visualize printing on foil, and that's literally all you have to do. So we can now click and move, and we can now see the foiled effect of my design before I go out to proof or press. So I can decide, have I got it right? Does it look good? Could I change something to improve it? And if I do, I'll go back to the design stage, re-update my file, make a new PDF file, and revisualize. The other environment that I mentioned is the viewing booth. The viewing booth is our pre-pressed light box. So again, let me just demonstrate how this works. It's got an overhead static light source this time. And because of that, you have to basically move your print differently. So it's just like in the real life. You'd have to take your print and move it back into the light to be able to see the effects. So the reason I've finished off in this part of the environment is because I want to show you dimensional effect. So if we look at the word Orchard Estate, we have a light blue on a dark blue background, and we have a light red on a dark red background. Now when I move that into the light, we've now got dark blue on a light blue background, dark red on a light red background. So when the light bounces off the metallic becomes visually more brighter than the four-color area, and it makes it look like it's changing color from a lighter to a darker hue. And to demonstrate that, let me do half on and half off. So you can see that light blue changes to a dark blue. And this is how we interact by creating these effects with our color palettes using the white toners. And it's a great way to be able to add dimension for something moving around. So that is the ColorLogic system. I'm just going to finish off by demonstrating the other file, which is our image that we did from Photoshop. This is just to show you the photorealistic conversion. So again, that's going to render that file, brings it in, we visualize printing on foil, and I can now see that effect. And if you notice, by putting the metallic in the background, it actually makes it work a heck of a lot better than putting anything in the foreground. You can see these neons here as well. We've actually got some flashes of color coming through. So very quick to do, but it's all down to the design. Our palettes and plugins are easy to use, but it doesn't guarantee you a good design, and this is where you have to have design skills. And this is why we suggest that you purchase the Premium Plus license, so you can get upstream to your design agencies. So the designers make these files before they come to you, and then you just simply output the file onto your press. Of course, you can do the conversions internally using the standard license, and if you have a customer that you wanted to do this themselves, you can buy what we call a la carte, meaning you can buy a single design suite on its own from us and sell that. So you don't have to buy the premium, but it's just more cost effective to do so. So that is the ColorLogic system. If you have any questions, please direct them to support@color-logic.com, and we look forward to welcoming you as a customer.